everybody, and welcome to the DEARG podcast, the podcast that brings you education and information on endometriosis and adenomyosis. My name is Kathleen King, and tonight I'm joined by Shannon Cohn. I heard of Shannon back, well before 2016 when she launched Endo What, and we had an Irish premiere here in Letterkenny and Donegal. And I was so glad then to be able to sort of, join her again in awareness in only a couple of years back to screen Below the Belt in Dublin in the Irish Film Institute. And it was a fantastic night. Shannon, for anybody who doesn't know you, do you want to give us a bit of an introduction and how you got involved in this?
Sure. First, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and to talk to you. Wow, let's see. How did I get here? I think probably like so many, it's a personal journey. I have endometriosis and I first had symptoms at 16, yet didn't hear the word until 13 years later. So that's 13 years of being told things like it's in my head, or I'm exaggerating, or my pain wasn't as bad, or as part of being a woman, and all of those things, of course, first, and then doing the merry-go-round of different specialists and healthcare providers and tests and medications and really chasing symptoms before I finally received, that definitive diagnosis of endometriosis. And I got here specifically as far as working professionally in the field and using kind of my professional skill set as a filmmaker, as a lawyer, and a social impact strategist, really also because of a personal reason too, is I am very fortunate to have two daughters, but those two daughters have a 7 times increased genetic risk of having endometriosis. And it's the thought or the fear of them going through, and so many of all of our collective, daughters of this next generation and future generations, of continuing to go through what so many of us have gone through, that's propelled me to where we are today, to try to be part of a change, try to be part of making progress, be part of saying enough is enough and let's do something about this.
And it is so important to do that, isn't it? It's so important for us who have learned from those before us to sort of give back and make sure that this next generation doesn't go through what we went through. And as powerful as the two documentaries are, and certainly anybody I know who has watched them has been incredibly moved by them and fired up as well to make sure that other people will learn from this. What has the reaction been to to both documentaries, but pretty much more so to Below the Belt because it's the most recent one? You've had a lot of media coverage, but what has the reaction been on the ground, to this?
The reaction's been, overwhelmingly positive. Depending on who's watching it, that really dictates the reaction. For so many people who live with endometriosis, I think it's a reaction of validation, of almost like relief, and relief in just, seeing a common shared experience, and the fact that somehow seeing someone else's lived experience on screen, just it validates our own experience, but it underlines it as true. I've had so many people just saying, oh, this is all true, what I've experienced. It's just this has in fact happened, and it is outrageous, to all of us. To caregivers, we've really experienced a lot of gratitude, and I've heard more than once at a screening that the film and what we've done is like saved marriages or saved relationships. Probably even, my own husband, who was not, acquainted with endometriosis at all until he met me. But in interviewing, people and hearing their stories, he's told me, like, this has really helped my understanding of your experience and has helped our own marriage. So it goes, beyond the screen. Let's see, it's been interesting because Below the Belt was really meant to bring this discussion into the mainstream and put endometriosis on the radar of people who had never heard of it, or maybe heard of it in a very cursory way and didn't really have an in-depth or like a meaningful understanding of what it is. So we were trying to do that with the film in a way of traditional storytelling. And so that has been very interesting. And a lot of times for that reaction, it's been kind of like outrage or just disbelief that this has been going on and it continues to go on. I hear that all the time. With medical students, we've been screening this at about 20 medical schools so far, mainly to or like first year medical students. And I mean, I will say they're like so passionate about it. They're just fired up. They had no idea this was going on, most of them, and really are well positioned to do something about it and feel compelled to do something about it. I feel like we're hitting them at just the right time in their career, as they're learning. And then it's been really heartening to bring endometriosis in the film into global forums on healthcare. Like 2 weeks ago, we were in New York and we screened the film at the conference on the status of women with the UN, and we screened it, in conjunction with the World Economic Forum. A lot of huge global, organizations who make large decisions around, public health initiatives and things that we should be focusing on. So, ensuring that endometriosis has a place in that discussion has been heartening, and that's something the film has helped do.
That is huge, and it is such an achievement because, certainly back in the very early days, and even when we started to see Endo coming through, and at the years even in between, we've had lots of discussions amongst ourselves, but certainly since Below the Belt has come out, and I was seeing this huge amount of media coverage around it, and it's all very empowering, it's all very accurate, and that's thanks to the work that you've put into that. So being a documentary maker, being a storyteller, being that person that somebody's going to trust, how do you balance such a very sensitive subject like endometriosis, where you might be dealing with infertility, you might be dealing with chronic pain, you might be dealing with a lot of loss and grief? How do you balance that out as a documentary maker and still get the best story, to tell?
That's a great question. Oh, it's not easy. It's really not easy. I mean, it's not easy personally, and it's not easy professionally. Personally, just because I felt in making this film as a patient and as someone who has gone, has this shared lived experience of living with this condition, I felt such a personal responsibility to the people who entrusted us, and brought our cameras into their lives in such intimate and vulnerable moments. I felt such a personal responsibility to get it right, and I will say that was helpful at times too, just my own lived experience, because I knew when I would watch the footage, when we were editing it, and you watch it when you're filming it in a certain way because you want to make sure the lighting is right and the technical and you're in focus and all of those things. So I kind of have a filmmaker hat on then, because I just want to make sure that we capture it the way it should be captured. But then when we are editing it, I'm able to sit back and watch the actual story and watch the moment and from an emotional place. And then it's like really about, right, this is a common experience we all share, and seeing it, play out on screen in front of me, and understanding, like, even though it's very specific to this person, their life, their location, their specific challenges, there is a common thread, and recognizing that common thread and saying, okay, this is authentic and this is true. And this is, I think, something that can speak to all of us as far as like a common, human lived experience. Like things like, for example, in Below the Belt, there are parents who care about their daughters. And they just want their daughters to be healthy and live fulfilling lives. And it is terrifying for them to be confronted with a complicated condition like endometriosis, which is not straightforward. It is devastating. It's financially draining. It's all of these things. And to be confronted with it as a parent is, I think, something that extends beyond endometriosis. Anybody who cares about someone else, and it doesn't have to be a child, it could be your own parent, or it could be a partner or a sibling, when you feel like someone you love is threatened in some way and you can't control it or you can't protect them, it's very frightening. So really showing that, and showing that what these people are going through is something that we should all care about in that way, because it affects all of us. That's something we strove to do, and that's a very fine line. Also, of course, with pregnancy loss, which is devastating. I have suffered pregnancy loss, and I know, how personal it is and intimate, and I mean, honestly, like just soul crushing to experience that. So, but I also felt like we couldn't ignore it. We couldn't like not include it in some way because it's such an integral part in a lot of our stories when we have this condition that we had to share a story in some way because it's important to see it and to hear it and to discuss it and talk about it. So, but at the same time, I try to tell as many people as possible before they watch it, like this does include pregnancy loss. So basically prepare yourself in whatever way that makes sense to you. And for some people that may need not watching it right now, and that's happened, and that's okay. All of that is okay. I will say something interesting is I worked with an editor who had no experience in women's health, no experience in endometriosis, had no idea. He happens to be a man. And it was very interesting to work with him to tell the story because he was my barometer in making sure that some 50-year-old guy was going to care about this, or some random person was going to care about this because he's so talented. But he would just say, yep, I'm not going to care about that. I mean, he cared about it, but he was like saying, no, you got to leave it out. It's important, but no, like, stick to the goal. The goal is to get the mainstream to care about this and to share true, authentic stories. But you can't have everything. And I've said before, like, if we included everything about endometriosis, first of all, I don't think that's possible to include everything about endometriosis because we don't know everything about endometriosis. But if I tried, it would be the longest 10 episode series on Netflix that anyone's ever seen, and I don't know that anybody would watch it. So we have to pick and choose, and we do that with an editor. So yeah,
I think that's where a good editor comes in, isn't it? Because we're very biased. We're going to want to see certain things, and we're going to want to represent it maybe in a certain way.
Yeah.
So it's fantastic to have somebody like that who's objective as well. And aside from sort of, even trying to edit it down or to tell the story as a collective there, what challenges did you face? Obviously, you've been traveling quite a bit, even in making both documentaries and also traveling to try and promote this and educate as well. So what sort of challenge have you faced around this?
That's been a huge challenge. I mean, we have hundreds of hours of footage for, a 1 hour film. And it's like it's really about telling the story at the end of the day, the story of not just the four main subjects, but the story of all of us, the story of a disease, or the story of the people who have a disease. That's what we try to do. And then there's a well-known phrase in filmmaking, and it's called, and you can ask any filmmaker or editor about it, it's called "kill your darlings." It sounds very ominous.
Doesn't sound good at all.
I know it sounds, and it is awful, but it basically means that there's always, one interview that you really love or one moment in a film that you really love, and so many of those are left on the editing room floor, so to speak. Just because it's like one moment is great, but does it add to the story, or does it distract from the story, or does it make the point you're trying to make a little muddier? Like, so it's like the storytelling or the filmmaking itself is a collective pursuit. It's not just one moment. It's many moments that, create a dramatic arc. So there are lots of, beautiful moments or heart-wrenching moments. There are still some moments that if I watch the footage, and I've watched it, 100 times, even stuff that's not in the film, I still tear up. I still cry because it's such a true moment. But maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll do it. We'll put something together for another film, because there's definitely enough really great footage.
I would say that because, certainly once women start to talk about their experience and their caregivers start to talk about it, it's just an outpouring, isn't it? And I know certainly over the last 20 odd years, I've listened to so many stories, and I thought I was tough enough to watch the film and Endo as well without getting emotional, because
Yeah.
really don't get emotional at anything like that, and it was like, no, couldn't get past the opening credits and Endo on me, the music on me. And then Below the Belt, it was just like, oh no, this is just, the hair was standing on the back of my neck. And the electricity in the room when we watched it together in Dublin was something else. It really was. And it fired up not just the anger, the grief, the loss, but also fired up this sort of collective pride as well too, that we're not alone. And I think, certainly in Ireland, we've got, a very desperate community. We're not connected by very many things. So when we have an event like that, it was really powerful, and it's encouraged so many people to speak, which is fantastic afterwards. So can you tell me what you would have seen and what you think is still the largest misconception around endometriosis?
The largest misconception is that it's something, it's like a marginalized condition. I mean, we know it's a marginalized condition, but it's like a niche condition is what I hear that still. And I especially hear it when I face resistance into these larger, health communities where they think endometriosis is something that's rare or something that is not that bad. I've heard that before. Of course, I have all of my data and facts ready to go to tell them how wrong they are when they say that, but I do hear that often. And I think that the film can, and like you say, all of us using our voices or collectively can help overcome that. But it's still, a widely held misconception within the mainstream, like outside of our collective, like smaller, kind of patient communities.
And I suppose one of the things that you have inspired is that we have a couple of Irish filmmakers looking to make their own sort of, documentaries and dramas even around endometriosis. Would you have any advice for somebody who's maybe starting out on that road?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, I think there are always, I mean, we are as human storytellers. And that's how we relate to the human condition, to each other, to our own lives. That's how we understand, our own experiences. So the more stories, the better, the more attention that we're bringing to those stories, the better. Oh gosh, advice. I mean, I would say just, trust your instincts. And if the story is true, then it's the right story. If it feels true and authentic, that's the story you should be telling. And that to trust that you'll find that the story will find its audience. Because that's, can be quite daunting, but to trust, if you tell a true story, authentic story, it'll find its audience. And as a filmmaker, from a practical level, just find the best editor you can. An editor that is not scared to say no or to tell you the truth, even though the truth hurts.
That could be a whole piece of advice for every part in life, couldn't it?
I mean, I know. Maybe we all have a good editor in life because, an editor who edits with love but truth.
Yeah. You're not going to make that mistake today, so off we go.
Yeah.
That could work. So we are going to host a screening of Below the Belt here in Donegal at the end of April, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I probably will sort of tear up again watching this. But if there was one message that you would like the Donegal audience and hopefully some of the healthcare providers and political people who are going to attend this, what would you like them to take away from the film?
I would love for everyone who's watching the film to understand that endometriosis is a real and devastating condition that makes a tremendous impact on the people who have it, not only them, but the people who love them, as well as their larger communities and society as a whole. It not only affects people personally and individually, but collectively. It affects every facet of a person's life, whether it's their ability to, have meaningful personal relationships, to start a family, to have fulfilling careers. And beyond that, puts such a tremendous economic burden on society. So it just makes all types of sense to tackle it in meaningful ways and to find practical solutions to the challenges that people with endometriosis are facing, and that it's just, at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. That's why we're all here, and to keep sharing our stories, our voices, and we're getting there. Yeah, with great collaborators and allies. I have great hope for the future.
I hope so. And I think in a few years' time, when the next documentary comes out, we will be able to see that there has been even more huge progress made. Like since, 2016, we've seen, things have changed. We're tempted to think in the negative that nothing changes, nothing shifts. But I think even, certainly over my time, the ability of people to be able to speak about the condition has improved. The strength of the community has improved, and bringing in strong advocate voices like yourself has enabled people to be able to tell their own stories, and that might be in a very small way, even to their family. It could be on social media, or it could be on something as large as the documentary. So I suppose one final question: is there anybody that the documentary is not for? So who should watch it?
I think everyone can learn something from the film. It doesn't matter, who it is, and we're working on. I should say we're working on making this film as accessible as possible. Distribution, especially international broadcast distribution, is very complicated. So it is like you can't do. There are a lot of rules, unwritten rules and written rules, but it will be available for everyone. It's just jumping through a few hoops, and it's important to me that it is available to everyone, because I hope that this film, is available, for example, in broadcast in Ireland, so that Uncle, what's a common Irish name for a man?
We could say Uncle Paddy.
Uncle Paddy is watching the film on a random Wednesday night, doesn't know that he should care about, endometriosis, but because it's an interesting film and a good film, he continues to watch it. And then 2 years from now, Uncle Paddy notices someone who has symptoms of endometriosis, says something, and then that person is diagnosed right away.
Yeah.
That's the goal. I mean, that's why the film is for everyone. And now, I'll think on that, but I can't think of a single person who couldn't benefit from it.
I think so. I agree. And I think it will be fantastic when it does come to broadcast. And I hope that we will see it here.
Yeah.
And, believe me, we will make sure that everybody in Ireland gets an opportunity to know that it's on and to watch it. It'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
And like I say, I'm really looking forward to, again, get the community together for that. I think it'd be, again, another positive sort of outcome. I think it'd be a great opportunity to bring the community together. And I suppose for those then who maybe won't be able to join us in Donegal because it's a big distance from a lot of places, where can we watch Below the Belt online at the moment?
Well, in the US, it's available online, but the best way until then is to go to belowthebelt.film. We have a lot of events happening basically every week. Like we just finished a free screening with Clue App, and then beyond that, we've screened we just did like a 4-day screening of Pay What You Can virtual screenings. So I would say, go to the website, email us at info@belowthebelt.film. There's always a way to watch the film. If you reach out to us, we'll make sure you can.
Perfect. That's brilliant. And if somebody wants to host a screening maybe further down the country as well, get in touch with you.
Yes, that'd be
great. Brilliant. Shannon, thank you so much for chatting with me this evening. And it's been an absolute pleasure, always inspired by your work, and, delighted to be able to support you in even the small ways that we can. So thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you. Likewise.
And thanks everybody for listening to this episode of DEARG, and we'll catch up with you all again soon.